And we're also here to honor the French resistance, who, without them, you would not be here to share your story today.
That's correct.
And let's just say, where did we leave off? We were actually at a place called the Circus. It's known as the Circus, and it was a World War I cavalry training.
That's right.
Why don't you continue with your story?
Well, what had happened, I was brought there by a different cell of the French resistance, not knowing who I was. And the day after I arrived there, a gentleman walked in dressed up as a cavalry officer. Apparently he was French, and he insisted I tell him who I was and what I was doing in France. I thought that I was with probably a German looking like a Frenchman, and I wouldn't give him anything but name, rank, serial number. He threatened to shoot me 2 days in a row, and the second day, when I refused to give him information, they sent Madame Ramauget back, who helped me once before, and she said, these fellows aren't fooling around. Tomorrow they're going to put you up against the wall and shoot you because they think you're German. So I said, well, I better give them the story. You know, it's better alive than dead. I don't want to be a martyr, a dead martyr. So I told them that I came from the 4th Bomb Group, 612 Squadron. I was in the 8th Air Force, flew out of Deanthorpe, England, and that if you flew over my base, it looked like a pistol. And at the end of the pistol, there were 3 small lakes or ponds, and it looked like the end of the pistol was shooting bullets. So she took that with her. 3 days later, they came back and they said that they checked that out with the French and also the British intelligence, and they proved that I was correct. At that same time, Pierre Demachet, who helped me at the bakery later on, and one of the fellows that saved me, one of the 3 fellows that saved me, he created a big stir.
You've brought a picture of him.
I did. I brought a picture of him, and he said he was going to take me to his bakery, and he's going to try to get me back into health again and away from this cell. And the very next day was Easter, so they took me to a party at Rene Felix's house. But before going there, we went to the St. John the Baptist Church for communion, and it was loaded with German soldiers. But that's the way the French were. They were very gallant people, and I was fortunate to get out of there. We went to the farmhouse. I had quite a bit of champagne, and I didn't feel too good, and they finally decided better get me back to the circus, which we did. The very next day, the Pierre came back and took me to his bakery, and it was a 2-story building with a bakery down below, and he hid me there for a longer period of time than he should have. Generally, when you got into the French resistance and you went into a safe house, it kept you there 1 or 2 days. In this case, where I had to be brought back to health, and he had chicken coop, he had eggs and so forth. I had a pretty good meal, and his bread was wonderful. And I started putting on weight, and I get to the situation where I started to work with the French resistance. What they did is Pierre had in his chicken coop, he had built a false wall and went into his cellar and showed me a 10 by 10 room loaded with all kinds of ammunition, guns, time bombs, or what have you. One day he came back and he said, there's an American plane that I found, and it looks like a new plane. So I said, let's go take a look at it. We went by, we saw it was a P-51 Mustang, one of the newer planes America had. And I said, what are you going to do with it? He said, should we blow it up? I said, I think we should. So he got friendly with the guard there, went down to the cellar, got his time bomb. We went back again, and an hour later, poof, the plane was gone, so was the guard.
Yeah, he tricked that German guard.
That's right. That's right.
How brave were these French
These
resistants?
French, at nighttime, we would go out to an area, and they'd give me a Sten gun, a little small gun, and my arm was still in the cast, and I would hold it with my left hand. I'd be standing guard while British planes would fly over and drop supplies. And they told me that if a British plane landed, you better run onto the plane, and it'll take you back to England, which they never did. Well, one day, if you saw that picture with Demachet and myself and his friend, that was the day before the a collaborator gave me away for a $10,000 reward. Not only did they give me away, but they gave away Mrs. Demachet, and the Gestapo came out, captured us, brought us back to Reims, France, and they questioned me, banged me around a little bit, not bad, but they tortured the poor woman, and she never gave them any information, and as a result, they eventually sent her to a prisoner of war camp, and they stayed there for well over a year.
Talk about the torture.
Well, what they did, I hate to tell you this, but they took a pair of pliers, pulling her fingernails out with those pliers, and you could hear her screaming. Right. And while she was screaming, they had a Smith mixer in front of the Gestapo headquarters. They started that Smith mixer up so the people outside couldn't hear her.
Yeah, it could block her screams.
That's right.
The reason I asked you that is because it's not without risk of personal injury and perhaps near death, if not execution, that the French resistance helped you.
That's right.
I wanted to make sure that they got credit.
That's correct. How I escaped that way is a long story, but I'll make it quick. The chief of police of Reims was one of the leaders of the French resistance. And when my transportation to another headquarters for interrogation, they put me in a German squad car with 2 guards, and the chief of police created a diversion and blocked the whole square off. And when they did that, they took me out of the car, stuck me in the chief's car, put a hat, deputy chief of police hat on, and threw over my shoulders one of his jackets. And that's how we went through the roadblock. The Germans never knew what happened. So there wasn't even a gun fired.
No? You escaped looking like a police officer.
Like
they call them a
officer.
gendarme?
Well, that's as a deputy chief of police.
That's wonderful.
So they took me back to and hid me again in that champagne factory until that night, and that following, when they came and got me, they brought me to another farmhouse, and I met a British bombardier, and his name was Jack Hode, and he had been shot down a couple of days before, and the farmer told us that if the Germans come looking for you, and I'm sure they're going to look for you because you created enough problems, have 2 wells. One's a dry well, the other one's a wet well. So we're going to put you down that well. And don't you think the next day the German Gestapo's come looking for us, and we're down the well for over an hour while they were discussing where I could be, and right above the well, they were sitting right on the well.
Frightening. Frightening.
It was frightening, but we managed. And an hour later, out we came, and they immediately took us to another safe house, to a place called Café de Bourgogne. At the cafe, I met up with a Frenchman that was very friendly with German pilots. The German pilots were stationed at an air base right next to him, and he tried to get one of the German colonels to fly me back in one of his airplanes, an Me-110, which was a fighter plane that could seat 2 people. And he'd never told the German pilot who I was, but I think he might have assumed I did. 2 days later, the poor fellow got killed. And I had 2 good dog tags like everybody else did, but the Gestapo had taken one dog tag, but I never knew what happened to the other one. He had the dog tag on his mirror hanging behind his bar. He wouldn't give it back to me. Well, they had to get me out of Reims quickly, so they put me on a train with Jack Hode, and we went down to Epernay, and from there to Paris. And when I got to Paris, we met with this woman named Genevieve. She was head of a resistance, a very famous woman in the resistance force. And she brought me to a gendarme's house, a person that, gendarme is a Paris policeman. Mm-hmm. Now he had another uniform, and he was about my size, and he said, we got to put you in the uniform because we can't keep you in a house. We have to walk around Paris because the Germans have a roust. They block off a whole block, and they walk in looking for the Jews. They're looking for LIM spies, and they're bound to get you because you're only 20 years old. So here I am walking around the Champs-Élysées for 2 days with him. And one day I had to go do my duty, and in France they had these bathrooms were out in the street.
Right.
And this German soldier walked in and asked me a question, and I said, "Shit us apart," and I walk out of there. It taught me one thing: never to speak the language, because you never know what's going to happen, and always have somebody with you.